Right, Jennifer, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, and I'm glad you're doing well. And I just kind of thought I'd start off because you're a doctor of psychology, and I really like your content. I stumbled across your profile on Instagram, and I just really like what you're about, and your posts, and your focus, and what you do. And I just kind of thought I'd start off by how you kind of got into that, what you kind of specialize on, really.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so I'm a psychologist and I'm glad you were able to find me because I'm just starting to spread my wings on social media. This whole thing is really brand new to me. I've been practicing here in Colorado for the past 4 years, and really what I do is I help women understand their anxiety, and I do this by helping them understand their thought patterns and pointing out new ways to help people rewire their brains and to use coping skills to really transform their lives so that they can show up for their day grounded with joy and lightness and ease rather than being weighed down by feelings and thoughts that are not helping us, not serving us. And so while I am a I received my doctorate in psychology from the University of Colorado. I have like a foundation of, cognitive neuropsychology and cognitive principles. I have found that in recent years, I've taken a more holistic approach to, I guess, healing and transformation. So what I do is I fuse cognitive behavior therapy, which is considered to be the gold standard for treating anxiety, with kind of a spiritual lens. So I know that you do a lot of podcasts and interviews about like the law of attraction and manifestation and understanding how your energy impacts the way you live. And so I incorporate all of that into working with women and helping them transform their relationship to anxiety. So I think we what I found is that most people think about anxiety all wrong, or the way they conceptualize it is kind of a little bit off. And so the way I teach it and the way I think about it is anxiety is not a thing. I think we talk about it as if it's like this living, breathing thing that's like moved into our minds and taken over, but I don't think that this is the case. What anxiety is to me is this pattern of thinking, and we've learned how to do it by watching others, by watching our parents, by watching our partners, and seeing how other people react to their environment. It's something that we learn, and so therefore it's something that we can unlearn as well. And so it's like moving past this paradigm of anxiety is this thing that I need to get rid of, and thinking of it more as like a fluid thought process that we can work with and move past. And this allows people to be much more flexible in how they approach their anxiety and how they approach transforming their lives.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love when that you're wanting to help people, with their anxiety. And I think with anxiety, it's quite a big, massive spectrum. There's all many different forms of anxiety, and like you said, a lot of people often see it as this thing, that it's this thing that they've got, and almost like it's some kind of virus. And it's like it's there's such a spectrum to it, and I think it's so good that you're helping people through that, because it's almost like you said, you have to kind of see it in a fluid way. There's different approaches to it, and CBT, NLP, all these different methods of helping people in that area is really, really effective, isn't it? And I think especially if you had your own kind of bouts with anxiety, you really understand it, and you can really almost connect with it in other people, and you really can really help them in like a deep way with that.
Yeah. And so we have spoken about this before, and I didn't bring this up in my introduction, but this has been the impetus to me getting into this field, is that I have had my own struggles with anxiety. And this, I, because of this, feel so motivated to help people learn and grow and move past it. That this has been the background of my entire like study in psychology, has been learning how to understand my own challenges and helping people move past their own challenges. And it's really, it's not a one size fits all. There isn't like one specific method that's going to help everybody. That's why psychologists and therapists have such robust practices, because everyone is so unique and so individual. And just saying, okay, this is how we treat anxiety is with cognitive behavior therapy doesn't work for everyone. And sometimes they need to incorporate different elements or different coping skills into their practice to help them learn and grow. And I think it's closed-minded to think that there's just one prescribed method to treat mental illness, because there isn't. There's a huge array of things and tools that we can be using and working with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
I agree. No, sorry, you continue.
No, and so I guess just circling back to like how I've gotten into this and how I've learned to show up online has been tricky, because to me, I see social media and I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem authentic. People are showing up on social media to share just one narrow piece of themselves. And so it's been a challenge for me to understand how to show up authentically, how to show all of my, all my characteristics, all my colors online, and navigating that world of like showing up authentically and providing helpful information has been kind of like what I've been working on the past few months here. And it's been really fun and exciting.
And I think that's one of the things, isn't it? Like you're being very genuine and authentic, and you've been in that place. You've had anxiety, and like you said, it's not like one size fits all, and people have different ways of getting through anxiety. CBT might not work with some people; they may need some other kind of treatment, and like with medication, it's not always medication.
Yeah.
Medication isn't really the answer, and I think that's something that happens with some people. They get on medication, they get on different types of medication, and then before you know it, they're on different medication for like something quite simple. It might just need
Yeah.
a few therapy sessions or CBT. But I think like it takes a big step, like you said, in what you're doing, in opening up and being authentic and genuine on social media is intimidating, and this is something that you're doing, and you're stepping into that place, and you're wanting to help other people, and you're saying this is where I am, and there's a lot of strength in that, and I think it's really rewarding in everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, this
You're
is a
welcome.
theme that's played heavily into the way I show up online, is feeling that experience of fear and feeling discomfort and leaning into it rather than shying away from it. Because we experience something that's uncomfortable or we experience something that's scary, our inclination is to hide from it or to run away, to go in the complete opposite direction. And that actually ends up making anxiety worse, or that ends up making your phobia even stronger. So that when the next time that phobia presents itself, you have that really extreme response to it because you ran away from it. It's like making it even worse. So when we lean into an experience of discomfort and actually embody it, it always passes. And that's something that I really try to get across to my clients, is that if you have a scary or an uncomfortable feeling, don't try to hide it, or don't try to pretend like it doesn't exist. That actually makes it grow. It's very like treating anxiety, I think, is very counterintuitive in that the solution is leaning into it. And like that seems very, very strange to most people who don't have training in this. They would think, that's really weird. Why would I try to lean into the experience of anxiety to make it go away? But that's actually weirdly how it works. When we lean into it, feelings, like really intense emotional experiences, tend to only last between 60 and 90 seconds. And so when we have that knowledge, when we think like, okay, I have a really uncomfortable experience right now, knowing that it's only going to last for a minute, that it's going to pass after 60 seconds is so powerful, because then we can lean into it and not judge it and just experience it, and then look back at it and think like, what can I replace, how can I replace that thought, or what can I do to have myself think of the situation differently. I do a lot of work with mindset and manifestation, and I know you know a lot about this, but having my clients actually feel and embody the future self that they want before it's happened, I think is the foundation to manifesting or bringing in what you want into your life. And when we do this, when we actually feel as though we've already received what we desire and become in alignment with it, with that energy of our future self, we become an energetic match for it. And we hear these terms being thrown around a lot in like the self-help space, but it's so true with overcoming and working through mental illness as well, specifically anxiety. When we feel what it feels like to not have anxiety, or to approach a situation clear and with a clear head and a calm mind and like a still heart, we're able to feel that experience before it's actually existed. And so we program ourselves to think and feel in that way. And when a triggering situation comes up, then we think, oh, I know how to solve this. I've already experienced that feeling. I've already felt that feeling before.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think they're really good points. And I think, like you said, with anxiety, it's almost like fighting fire with fire, isn't it? I think if someone's experienced a certain element of anxiety, we can often want to run away from the things that scare us or whatever that situation may be. And I think part of us, kind of wired that way. We're wired to run away from what's gonna kill us, scare us. It's those survival instincts start, playing out, and it's that fight or flight, and all those triggers get, activated, and with that anxiety, like you said, an energy, and when you talk about situations, if you're stressed or you're going into a situation that's going to scare you, and you're preparing yourself and you're thinking that, you know, this situation is going to threaten me, you're then going to take that energy into that situation, most probably, And
Yeah.
like what you said with people, like I had this conversation with someone the other day, and she said she tells her clients, whether it's making a phone call, kind of see yourself doing that before you've already done it, and take that energy that you want into that situation, which,
Yes. Yes.
and when, it all kind of interlinks, doesn't it? Anxiety is like a big spectrum, and there's, like you must do it in your work. There's many different ways of kind of coping with that.
Yeah, yeah. No, what you've said is so spot on. I think, especially in today's day and age, we are bombarded with tons and tons of stimuli, and it's easy to stress out about. Like our world is set up in a way that is conducive to bringing on stress, like social media, our phones, computer, our work. Like we have access to everything all the time. I know that's from that's from a recent documentary inside, or recent anyways, from something on Netflix. But the thing about anxiety and overthinking is that inherently it's not negative. It's actually a protective mechanism, like you just said. And historically, this has benefited us. We are alive today because our ancestors were able to finally tune in to the negative things in their environment, pay attention to them, and avoid them. And that helped them. And that's why, their lineage survived. But it becomes a problem when this thought process or this thought pattern takes over and kind of like takes on a life of its own, and when we start perseverating in one of those feedback loops that only gives us negative. And so we call these, like psychologists call this, a thinking trap. It's like an unconscious psychological process that protects us from experiencing danger or experiencing something harmful in our environment. And it's interesting because people think that they can think their way out of a problem, or that they can like logically get their way out of a problem. But when you think about it, how are you going to get yourself out of a problem that your brain created, right? Like you gotta think about it differently. You have to realize that it's not about thinking your way out of a problem. It has to start with feeling, or it has to start with something a little bit deeper than just logically thinking. And so some of the really common things that come up, or these thinking traps, or the overthinking patterns that come up for me and for my clients, are, what I see a lot is fear of losing control. So like fear of losing control of your life, losing control of your family, that fear of failure. So like we often focus on all the things that could go wrong rather than all the positive things that could happen. And so when we're thinking about all the things that could go wrong, our brain is just kind of stuck in that negative feedback loop. Something that also comes up a lot is catastrophizing. And this is when we exaggerate our worries, or like tend to blow out of proportion the problems or the little things that come up in our lives. I know that I used to do this. Like if there's, I don't know, if I stopped for a red light and I was late to work, I would then start looping in my mind that I'm going to get fired, that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and all this negative cascade will follow. But that's just not the case. That's our brain making assumptions about the future. And so there are like 6 really common thinking traps that we fall into that tend to make people anxious. And so that's what I help people identify, their thinking traps, and help them realize that it's not, you're not unique because you're struggling with this. Like a lot of people struggle with this, and there's a solution to it. There's a way to work through it, and we just have to find the right way to do it, the right way that matches your personality, your lifestyle, your way of coping. But what I always like to tell people is that anxiety is 100% treatable. And I don't know if people know that, but it is 100% possible to overcome anxiety. And that, I think, in and of that, knowing that in and of itself is so empowering for people. They realize that they have the ability to transform. If you have that knowledge, you can do anything.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I love what you said, and I think, with mindset and like thinking traps, there's these different thinking traps that we kind of fall into, and I think we all kind of have some of them thinking traps sometimes in our lives, and when you talk about kind of catastrophizing, I definitely can relate to that. I know if something happens, if I cut myself, I can all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what about this, or oh, is this going to happen? And I think it all kind of goes back, to when I had, an accident many years ago. I kind of, you start thinking all these crazy things, and I think it's like you said, there is a way out of anxiety. There is, you know, a way to deal with it. And you have to ultimately, I think, take accountability, don't you? And I think you have to, just take these necessary steps. And, it takes time sometimes, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
if you're getting frustrated and you're not wanting to be in that place, it kind of puts more coal on the fire. And,
Yeah.
we're more powerful than we think, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think like we can push through anxiety, and it's okay to have anxiety as well. It's sometimes anxiety, I think, is normal to some extent. Sometimes people sometimes say, a little bit of anxiety is quite healthy in certain situations, to get you out of that situation. But if it's stopping you from living your life, then that's where problems occur. If you can't do normal everyday things because anxiety is preventing you from doing that. And
Yeah.
I remember doing this. Yeah, I remember doing this module, and there's so many forms of anxiety and so many symptoms of anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so right when you say that it's people get impatient with it.
Mm,
It's natural for us to want the quick fix. It's natural for us to want to be able to wave our wand and be like, you're healed, you're done. And that's just not the case. I think people get frustrated when they hear that they have to do the work. They have to actually put in time and energy to overcome it. And I mean, that's where people get hung up, because everyone wants the quick solution, and nobody wants to do the actual work that it takes to overcome whatever it is they're struggling with. That's why we have medications, right? Because medications quick fix you like that. But medication, in my opinion, is just like a mask. It just hides the symptoms and doesn't actually address what is going on underneath the surface and address the maladaptive thought patterns that we've kind of like adopted over the years. So you are spot on when you say that people get impatient with wanting to be fixed right now. I know I'm like that too. I get impatient when things don't pan out in like a day or so. So I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I think impatience is a big thing. I think like especially with anxiety. I mean, when I had anxiety and I was going through things, I used to kind of think, oh, why is this happening to me? Why me? And there's that kind of victim. You fall into that victim place,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, why me? What's happening to me? And then you just wanting to get it over with. But like you said, there's that power in kind of accepting it and
Yeah.
knowing that things are going to work out. And a lot of it, like you said, is almost like, in your mindset and the language that you speak to yourself, isn't it? Because I think depending on what anxiety it is and what's caused it, depends on each person. But, certain traumas and certain anxieties, like, especially if you don't want to go into a certain place or situation because you're afraid of having a panic attack in that situation. I mean, that's something that, I dealt with, and they're very, very difficult, but you have to know that you are in control, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really interesting that you say the victim, a lot of people play that victim role. And when we get into that headspace, we give everything else the power but ourselves, right? If we're the victim, we can't control our situation. We can't control our thoughts. We can't control anything. And that's a really scary place to be in for someone with anxiety, especially like you were saying, a panic attack, because if we have a fear that we're going to have a panic attack whenever we go into a particular environment, we're going to avoid it. And we're going to want to run the opposite direction and do everything in our power to avoid that triggering situation that gives us anxiety. And that ultimately makes us feel hopeless and feel like we don't have control over our life if we have to avoid X, Y, and Z in order to not have a panic attack. But the thing is, that actually makes things worse. That actually makes your anxiety about the situation grow because you're avoiding the situation that caused you anxiety. When you lean into it and you experience it, like I was saying earlier, you only experience that fear, that really intense emotion for about 60 to 90 seconds. And when you go into it knowing that, like, okay, I'll experience discomfort for 60 seconds, but then it will pass. And then I will be safe, or I'm safe even when I'm having this feeling of discomfort. There's so much power in that. It just rewires your brain to think and to realize that you can do it. You can do hard things. You can sit in the face of discomfort and it's okay. You're going to survive. You're not going to be threatened. A brain makes us think we are, but we're actually safe.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, would you say that sometimes people, when they're going through anxiety or if they're in that place, they can often feel like it's just them who's kind of experiencing it, and
Oh
it's like
yeah.
they feel like no one else is.
Yeah, it's super isolating. I think that's part of it, right? Like if we see ourselves, or if we think that we're reacting in a certain way and we don't see other people, you never know what's going on inside people's head, but it's so easy to think, like, because I have this thought and it feels abnormal, and you see someone sitting over there smiling, that they're just fine and dandy and nothing's going wrong with them. And so having that feeling like you're the only one in the world experiencing this can be really scary and isolating. And that leads to one of our like core fears as a human being, feel that fear of being left out, right? That like instinctual fear of being excommunicated from the tribe or from the family. It's a scary prospect, like to be isolated from other humans. And that, I think, a lot of the time anxiety and mental illness can absolutely lead to that feeling. But there's power in knowing that this is, I don't know the exact statistics on it, but millions of people worldwide, millions and millions of people worldwide experience anxiety. And there's tons of research into it. And there are tons of coping skills and things that we can do to address it. And so I think just having the knowledge that it's possible to overcome can be so powerful.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. And I think that's what people want to are, who may be going through anxiety, they may be experiencing it. They want to have that space and they want to hear it from people who have been there and they're being authentic and they're wanting to help. Because I think sometimes a lot of people saying, oh, you need to do this, need to do that. And a lot of people might not want to hear that information because they may not think that is genuine, or they, it's a very, very sensitive area. It's a very, very sensitive topic. And a lot of people might be going through it, but they don't want to come out with it. And I think, they need to feel they can discuss how they're feeling, with someone who's, being genuine and authentic, like yourself. And, do you think there's been an increase in it, during the pandemic? Have you seen an increase in anxiety in people? And,
Oh my,
how do you think people can like deal with anxiety, or how do you help them? Like, in your
oh,
sessions?
I think without a doubt, anxiety has increased in the pandemic. Like I don't know the exact statistics, I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers, but I think, we're all isolated in our homes now. We're all, our routines are disrupted. There's that fear of not knowing what the future is going to hold. That's terrifying. That's like what we consider little trauma, right? I think a lot of the time we think about trauma as being a isolated event, like a single instance of abuse or something like that. But trauma can actually be little events that pile up over time that make you feel like you don't have control of your life. And I think collectively as a society right now, we are experiencing that. We are experiencing that really like deep-seated fear of what in the heck is going to happen in 6 months, a year. What is life going to look like? Like how are we possibly going to emerge from this experience better than we are right now? And I think that plays into people experiencing fear. So 100% to answer that first part of your question. How do I help people? Well, it starts with, I think, identifying patterns, identifying where your thoughts are not helping you. I think a lot of the time people don't even recognize that their thought patterns are disruptive or that their thought patterns are leading them into despair. And so that pausing, learning how to just stop and identifying overthinking or identifying our anxiety is the first step. That next step is accepting what is happening. When we try to fight what's happening, we're going to get more of it. It's going to grow and grow and grow, and it's going to become a bigger part of our life. That's just the paradox of anxiety. But when we accept that it's happening, this actually allows us to moderate it and to learn from it. Like it creates this space. So it's, like I said, it's very counterintuitive, but it's from your negative thought patterns and learning how to replace your thoughts and incorporating new ways of thinking, incorporating new ways of doing your life, new ways of healing. So what I do is I help my clients, I give my clients the tools to slow down and to create space to assess their thought patterns and uncover what's significant and what can help them and what's just noise. Learning the difference between the two is so powerful. And then like, this is my favorite part, is to like provide my clients with options, right? Like introduce them to different tools that they can use. Like some people, cognitive behavior therapy and journaling is going to work great, but other people that's just not going to work for them. So what I like to do is I love to explore all these ideas of healing that are out there and help my clients hone in on what's going to work for them, what excites them, right? It has to feel good in order for it to stick. And so my job isn't to tell them you need to do this in order to transform your anxiety. No, my job is to give them the options and know them well enough to present them with options that are going to be helpful for them based off of their lifestyle. How old are they? Where do they live? Do they enjoy cooking? Do they enjoy nature? Do they enjoy reading? Like incorporating elements of things that they already like to do into their healing journey. And rather than trying to like wipe the slate clean and start over from the beginning, we take little steps and gradually move towards the life that they want, towards the mindset that they want, and like just incorporating little small changes along the way. That's why I say it's not easy. It's not like an overnight fix. I think if you're looking for someone who can like wave a magic wand and fix you, then you should probably just go to the doctor and get some medication. But I certainly don't recommend that, because that's not going to help with long-term change, right? What happens when the medication starts to not work? Then you're just stuck with like some unhelpful thought patterns that you're going to need to eventually address. And so that's what I do, is I help my clients look beneath the surface and unearth those unhelpful thought patterns so that they can work with them and change them. But you have to be ready and willing to do that. A lot of the time people don't want to look inside because it's scary. They don't want to see what's underneath because they're afraid of what might be there. But taking that first step and doing that is so powerful. That's really like what I work with to help guide my clients through their journey.
No, I love that. And it's so true, and I think, like you said, with the pandemic, there's definitely been an increase in anxiety with people. People are more, kind of, experiencing, tension, hypertension. There's what if, what is, what's going to happen, especially in hospitality. If certain workplaces shut down, you don't,
Yeah.
people are going to a base to work. That's it. They might lose their job. They might be on furlough. It's all kind of up in the air, even though, things are open up here now, things can close down like in a heartbeat. So people, like you said, are kind of experiencing more anxiety. And in terms of like what you do, like I really like what you mentioned, it's like, these small steps, and it's not overnight. And there is this process to it. And, people really need to be willing to kind of tap into themselves and open up that box, so to speak. And it's quite liberating, for people doing that. But it can take a lot of courage in order to do that, and it must be rewarding, kind of helping people and seeing them shift and grow. um but it's ultimately got to come from that person, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For me, one of the most rewarding moments is when a person opens up enough and is willing to look inside. That to me is like, that's the window of change, when they're ready to dive in and to look at what's not working. So often we're like quick to be judgmental, or we're quick to place blame on other people for our shortcomings. And that's not going to get us anywhere, right? We have to take responsibility for the way we think and the way we are. And people don't want to listen. People don't want to hear that. People want the easy fix. They want to blame others for their shortcomings, and they want to look for outside. They want the solution to be outside of them, but that's just really not the case. And it can be hard for people to hear that sometimes. And so when people are willing to accept that it comes from within, that's like, to me, the most gratifying moment of all of this. And I do want to say, like, I want to preface that by saying that it's easy to hear that and say, how is that not victim blaming, right? Because when we feel like we can take responsibility, it's really easy from someone on the outside to be like, you're just blaming the victim. If you say that you have control over your situation and over your life. But that, I think, that is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is, it's empowering when we're able to take responsibility and take control. And then that's where we can start doing the work. That's where we can dive in and start to actually make lasting change.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I think, like you said, it's that person getting to that place and you know opening up and realizing that they're going deeper into certain things, and they're kind of testing the water really, and it's you they must feel relief by doing that, and it's it's pretty liberating. And I think, like, when you think about it as well, when someone's going through something, there's a lot of strength that is kind of being kind of built in them throughout that process. And I think one of the rewarding things is that if someone's going through something, say one of your clients, they must see the changes in themselves and how far they've come, and that in itself is kind of healing and motivates that person to probably keep on going.
Oh, yeah.
And they can then use their experiences of what they've been through and relate to other people. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. Sometimes we go through people go through things, but there's like a reason for that in some way. I
Yeah.
think there's a reason why certain things happen, because I think if certain things were didn't happen to both of us and other people, we won't be having this conversation. So
Yeah.
I think it's weirdly all kind of connected, and for a reason. I think and anxiety isn't nice. It's difficult, and it's different for each person depending on the experience. But there's um there's a lot of growth to kind of be taken from the anxiety, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like a ripple effect. I think once you heal from it, and once you're no longer creating those like waves of pain that are like emanating from you, if you're somebody that is trapped in that negative feedback loop, you start to emanate feelings of positivity and love and joy, and that ripples. Like,
Mm,
you can feel that. You can definitely feel when somebody is showing up with love and joy and open heartedness versus somebody who is showing up from a place of pain and hurt. It feels different the second you walk into a room. I don't know, maybe I'm like just really sensitive to this because like I guess what you would call like a sensitive person or an empath, somebody who's like very in tune with like the energy in the room. But I think whether we recognize it or not, if you're showing up in a room from a place of anger and hurt, the people around you are going to act different than if you're showing up from a place of like just openness and joy. Feels different.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think like anger and resentment, bitterness. It's almost like a different vibration of energy, isn't it? And I think, like, if
Yeah.
you're open and you're listening and you're being empathic, and you're tuning in, you're almost tapping into a different wavelength, aren't you? Really, compared to
Yeah.
the people on the other ripples. And it's so interesting, how human beings work, and energy. And when you think about anxiety and you think about energy, it's all kind of connected, isn't it? Really. Um, and I think a lot of it, is kind of goes down to our wiring sometimes. Not only just the experiences that probably create anxiety, but naturally as human beings, we are kind of wired a certain way. So we have to kind of deal with sometimes things that may come up for us, if that makes sense, that we're
Yeah.
probably not aware of.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, like bringing awareness to your situation is always that first step. Like, you can't change something if you're not aware of it. So sometimes you need somebody to help point out what it is that you're not aware of. Like, it's hard to see within. Like, we often get clouded by our judgment, and so it's hard to actually see our patterns and our thoughts at work. Sometimes it's helpful to have somebody point them out, and that's where like working with a coach or working with a psychologist comes in to help you recognize what those subconscious patterns are and how they're impacting your life. Because I don't know, from the outside I can see something more clearly than if you're stuck in it. But yeah, like you said, with regards to energy, I think of anxiety as being kind of like a really heavy, low vibe state, whereas like when we're moving towards joy and like gratitude and love, that feels light, it feels fluid, it feels energetic. And so however you get to that feeling, from heaviness to lightness, is up to you. But that's where I come in, is to help guide you, like to put up those walls to help people realize that there are options to get there. That we don't just have to be stuck in that like low energy, heavy state forever. But
No, yeah, no, continue.
yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that, and I totally agree. And I think there's a way out of that energy, isn't there? If you're in that place, there is a way out. And I think kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, like you mentioned, like the mind and the brain like creates patterns, and when you talk about anxiety or situations that we create in our mind, you trying to think yourself out of a situation if your mind has created that loop because the mind creates patterns and routines. So it's almost like bit on a hamster wheel trying to think yourself out of the, and it's quite crazy when you think about it. But it's you need someone from an external figure to kind of get you to see things in a different way, to kind of put a different scope on it, don't you? Like like yourself. And I was just thinking, like, as well, do you have any like role models or like mentors?
Yeah, so I'm a huge reader, and I really love. Rich Roll is one of my major mentors. I don't know if you've heard of him or if you've listened to his podcast. He wrote the book Finding Ultra. I'm an athlete too, so I can relate to transforming hardship through sport, through exercise, through movement. So that really relates to me. People who encourage me to be fully myself and to lean into that experience of self-expression and to embody myself through embody every single aspect of myself, whether it's the things that I'm proud of or the things that I'm not proud of. And that's where this whole journey has taken me, is like leaning into all aspects of myself to be fully embodied. And so people who do this, I think Amanda Francis is another one. I don't know if you know her. She's pretty popular in like the woman self-help mindset, money mindset space. Michael Pollan also does a lot of work
he's amazing. He's
amazing. Yeah. Understanding how to change your mind, how your mind works, and understanding just the human perspective through a bunch of different vantage points. He's brilliant. Joe Dispenza also, I don't know if you've read any of his books, like Becoming Supernatural.
My mom's got his book, I think.
Yeah, I'm reading that right. I'm reading Becoming Supernatural right now, and it's phenomenal. Napoleon Hill, he's no longer alive, but through his writing, Think and Grow Rich. Deepak Chopra, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but I've recently read You Are the Universe. That just really ties back into that whole perspective that everything we need is within us. We have the power within us, and we just need to see it. We need to harness it and know how to work with it. So any of these people who encourage me to tap into that power within and to realize, to self-actualize, to come into our full potential are some of my major role models.
No, I love that. And I think it's so important, isn't it, to have role models and mentors, and to have, people, to look up to and to learn from, ultimately. Because I think, we're always learning, we're always growing. And, to be around the right content, the right people, we can, really take a lot from that. And, they're really great, role models and mentors. And I appreciate you sharing them. And that Michael sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you who some of yours were.
Oh gosh. To be honest, like they changed quite a lot as I've grown up. My mum's a big role model of mine. I've got friends in the States that I've met through podcasting called, Brian and Greg, and they're ex-military, and they're really, they work on human pattern recognition and human behavior. They're really interesting guys. And famous people widespread in the world are like Joe Rogan. His podcast and what he's about as well. I like Alan Watts. He was a philosopher. Um, oh, Simon Sinek, I quite like.
Mhm.
Napoleon Hill as well.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins. I quite like Gary V as well. I like, his kind of mindset on some things. Who else do I like? Grant Cardone, the guy who's in business.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. I haven't heard of a few of
yeah,
those, so I'm gonna take note and check
yeah.
them out.
I'll send you across. I'll send you them across. I'll also like mine's Alex Banyan. I read his book called The Third Door.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
about kind of creating it's basically there's a third door and there's a way around things. He's quite good, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's important to have role models, isn't it? And
Yeah.
sometimes they change and that's okay, but
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of growth to be taken from learning from other people.
Agreed completely.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I'm just trying to ask you something else. What would you say happiness is for you, or like kind of
Yeah.
or success?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on this a lot. I think for me, happiness is that feeling of being in complete alignment with who you want to be. Like knowing and loving and trusting that it's all working out in your favor, even when little things slip up that make you think otherwise. And like when I really tune into it, it's that feeling of calmness, really deep, deep, deep down in my soul that for me is described as a stillness or like a level of contentment. Um, and trusting that even if I don't have all the answers right now, but I know that they're coming. I know I'm going to be able to solve it. I know I'm going to be able to figure it out. And my knowing, trusting, and believing in my ability to bring about all that I desire. So that's what happiness is for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I
Thank you.
love that. I love how you worded that and what you said, and it's so deep, but at the same time, like there's so much truth in that. There's so much truth in that, and I think we don't have all the answers, but knowing that good things are coming, and you're constantly moving forward. In what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's it. No, definitely. And just thinking like as well, like, is there anything that you kind of want to promote? Is there anything you're working on? Where can people find you on social media and that kind of thing?
Yeah, thank you. So
No, you're welcome.
I if you'd love to connect, if you would like to learn more about anxiety, how to navigate anxiety, how to move past your relationship with anxiety, move into a life of alignment. I share a lot of information on Instagram, so that's really where I've been active as of late. I'm the anxiety doc, the.anxiety.doc. And right now I'm launching a new program. I don't know if you've seen anything about it, but it's called a 5-week anxiety transformation intensive, where I dive deep into the principles of anxiety with my clients. And so there's a course component where every week there are lessons and activities to work through if you want. And then there is a one-on-one component where I sit down and work with you through issues that come up as they arise. And I think that what I found is that, like with the traditional model of therapy, we often forget what it is we want to work on because our appointments are scheduled so far apart. With this, we go back and forth on Voxer, which is a voice communication app, to solve issues that come up as they come up, so that in the moment I can help my clients rewire their thought patterns and help address their triggers right then and there. And so that you're not waiting weeks and weeks and weeks to work through something, like it's happening right there in the moment. So this is really a comprehensive immersion program, for people who need something more, who therapy might maybe not who who therapy has not worked out for in the past, or maybe they need a little bit more hand holding. That's what this program's all about. I'm super, super excited. I've been pouring a lot of heart and soul and energy into it the past couple of months, and I'm finally turning it free to the world, and I'm really looking forward to working with people. And so I'm curious how this will land. I've never done this format before, like this course plus intensive program. And so I think it combines all the elements into one, and I'm really proud of it. So that's what I've got going on right now.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I really love your content and what you're about. And, I really, love your reels that you do. You're really creative and you really put a lot into your content and your work. And that's really something that stands out to me. You put a lot into what you do. And, I really love your reels, and they're very informative, and you can look at them and take something away from it. And I wish you all the best in your course, and it sounds great what
Thank
you're
you.
doing, and you're welcome. And I think it's just like you said, you've never done it before, but you're doing it. You're taking that step and you're doing it, and I really commend you for that, and I really commend you for everything that you're doing. I think you're doing great things in the world, and it's a really it's a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Adam. It was wonderful talking to you too. I appreciate your time.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome, and all the best, and take care, and I will do these soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your
Welcome.
evening.
You too. Take care.
Bye.